Look, we're in 2023. It's been a minute since Avengers Endgame. All the fanboyism, the controversies, the love, and the hate has long been stabilized. All right, my brothers and my sisters from another mister, maybe now is the time to share a few of my thoughts on the film's primary antagonist, this absolute juggernaut of a character, the Titan named Thanos. Note that this video isn't just going to be about whether Thanos was right. I mean, we will talk about that later in the section of this video. As for the main intention of today's video, we're going to take a holistic look at Thanos' character and see for ourselves that it never mattered whether he was right or not. His vision was flawed, but because he believed in himself to be the only one who had the will to execute it, he was everything he claimed himself to be. He was willing to do whatever it takes, even if it meant sacrificing what's most precious to him. If there's one thing that the Avengers couldn't compete with him on, then that was this man's indomitable willpower. In the words of Stephen McFeely, the worst thing about Thanos is that there's nobility to him. He looks at himself as a servant. And how are you going to stop a guy who had already made the conscious decision to perish after achieving an almost impossible goal? As Joe Russo said, he's an extreme sociopath with a messianic complex. The Avengers lost to him in Infinity War not because they were weak, but because they lacked his level of resolve, which is understandable because unlike him, they weren't just going to sacrifice their companions left and right. That's not how they are. So they failed. Plus, let's be honest, guys, the Avengers obviously couldn't live with their failure and ended up resorting into the time travel gimmick. Out of 14,605 potential futures that Doctor Strange saw, Thanos won in all except one. Thanos is a man of focus, commitment, and sheer fucking will. Thanos' backstory, his motivation, and his one-liners, the man is honest to a fault. He is just as gentle as he is mad. Now, to understand his reasoning behind the quote-unquote random genocide, we'll have to recall where he came from. As a member of the royal family of Titan, Thanos sincerely and unconditionally loved both his planet and his people. But the collapse from overpopulation and cryptic exhaustion of resources eventually led to the extinction of his people. He saw this coming and even suggested random genocide, one which is fair to both the rich and the poor, so that at least those who are left behind can continue to the legacy of their people. But he was called a madman and exiled from his own planet. He is left with no family, no home whatsoever. When he returns to Titan, he feels like a foreigner on his home planet. Everything has faded away except the memory of his failure to save his people. Having realized what it feels like to be the only one left behind, Thanos braced himself to make sure that no other planets do not suffer the same fate, and to that end, he comes to a not so usual realization. If he snaps half of all life in the universe out of existence, he'll ultimately restore balance to the universe. The populace wouldn't have to fear collapse anymore. He became an intergalactic warlord who invaded planet after planet while destroying half of all life on them. During his conquest, he picked up orphans from various races. 4 of them comprised an elite team called the Black Order. At one instance, he came across a brave little girl named Gamora. Even when she grew up and started hating him, he never, not once, stopped loving her. In the universe, Gamora was the most precious thing to him. He would make Gamora fight with another girl he adopted, Nebula. But whenever Nebula lost, he would remove a body part from her and replace them with cybernetics. You can say that this was his way of wanting his children to be strong, although eventually, after learning about the Infinity Stones and what they're capable of, he steered his life's mission in that direction. During the search, Gamora was tasked with finding the Soul Stone. She did, but she lied about it. Thanos saw right through her and said nothing in that moment until much later when he finally expressed his disappointment in her for not telling him the truth. And we all know what he eventually had to do to get to the Soul Stone. Thanos thought he was prepared for anything, but he wasn't. At least not to the extent he thought he was. To obtain the Soul Stone, he had to sacrifice a loved one, which in this case was Gamora. Yes, Gamora had grown to hate her father, but Thanos always loved her. He sheds tears in pain as he braces himself to sacrifice the most precious thing in the universe to him. Hate him for sacrificing his daughter. I respect that. But this is the reason the Avengers lost to him the first time, and then also in the 14 million or so potential futures. It's because they could not even begin to comprehend the lengths this madman was willing to go. In the beginning of Endgame, when the Avengers invade Titan and confront him, the big man was making a stew because, he was hungry. And he is ready to finally rest and watch the sunrise on a grateful universe, even if it meant all alone. He had lost everything once again. The Black Order were killed during the Infinity War, Nebula left him, he sacrificed his daughter Gamora, and basically lost it all. The Avengers come, cause a ruckus to start bullying him, and they go to work on his ass. He tells them that he used the stones to destroy the stones, which makes them panic. Thor beheads him before he could taste the stew he was preparing. Not that I blame Thor though, and you know, Thanos was hungry, so that's a good way to end it. Yeah, I'm not gonna let you finish your meal, bro. I'm decapitating your head. But I don't blame Thor. He's the one who lost the most because of Thanos. Throughout his life, Thanos never stopped believing that he was doing the right thing. He believed it to the very end. He was sincere to his conviction to the very end and was free of petty things like bitter rivalry or vendetta. It was just him and his goal. It doesn't matter if he was right or not because his character by itself was such a breath of fresh air. Despite the good conscience, his plan itself was fundamentally flawed. Remember Light Yagami from Death Note? How in order to quench his boredom, he dilutes himself into thinking that he's going to be the god of the new world and goes on a ruthless killing spree with perhaps the most efficient weapon of mass destruction in the context of his world. Thanos is the exact opposite. He is the antithesis to Light. Light was exceptionally self-centered, brutally arrogant, and laughably hypocritical. Thanos is none of those. He is about as sincere as he can get. But let's compare Thanos' plans with Light. Thanos was about bringing balance back to the universe, while Light initially started with the intention of ridding the world of all criminals. Thanos thought if he erased half of life, the other half would thrive. But the antics of the Avengers has shown him that as long as there are those that remember what was, there will always be those that are unable to accept what can be. Having said this, Thanos feels grateful. He now has a better idea what he must do. He declares that he will shred the universe down to its last atom, and then using the stones the Avengers have collected for him, he will create a new universe where the new life would never know what was. The alternate Thanos later even claimed that his motivation may not have been as selfless as he proclaimed it to be. It was selfish, a desire to be vindicated against all the Titans who rejected his plan and declared him mad, and wanting to be remembered with gratitude as a savior by the entire universe. We can't say Thanos was right because the man himself ultimately admitted that he was wrong. As for Light, his actions dropped the global crime rates by 70%. He was celebrated as the god of the new world by a major portion of the populace. Alright, both are wrong, but which of these two had the better idea in your opinion? The reason Light's plans seem more complete is because we know that he was driven by his own ego. He had a god complex. He simply believed himself to be better than others. He laughed hysterically and was devoid of shame. The reason Thanos' plan feels wrong is because despite his messianic complex, his idea was way too vague. Erasing half of all life would make things convenient for those who are left behind, but where do you draw the line? Plants, aquatic life, animals, birds also qualify as living things. If all life in the universe is going to be cut by half, how does that make a difference? The common headcanon is to declare that he was only talking about intelligent life, but that's not true because after Hulk does the anti-snap, we see a few little birds suddenly start chirping. Though then again, there's also the scene where Steve Rogers talked about how he saw a pod of whales. There were fewer ships and clear water. Okay, so were the whales an exception? These two instances contradict each other. I rationalize it like this. Half of all whales were also erased, but since there is less pollution in the ocean, the water is clear and you can actually see them. But if we're talking about rationalizations, the more one looks at Thanos' plan, the dumber it gets. I mean, why not just snap your fingers and double the planet's resources with the Infinity Stones? But anyways, I digress. We're gonna go right back into the video. He told Gamora that her home planet is basically paradise now thanks to what he did, but in the Guardians of the Galaxy, she is stated to be the last survivor of her race. I don't want to go down the comic book rabbit hole because this video is about Endgame and the prequel Infinity War, but it's worth mentioning that Thanos' perception was incomplete. It is also worth mentioning to check out ratedcomics.com for some really cool comics and Rated Comics exclusives to add to your comic book collection. Not to mention, I'm an author of 4 books, links in description, but we're gonna go back to the video now. As much as we talked about how hard Thanos tried, his iron will, awareness, vulnerability, and absolute trust in himself, he was also blinded by his own personal experience and unable to understand that not every planet is like Titan. Look, I have no doubt that his plan of random genocide would have worked on Titan, but it fails on all parameters when you consider how it affected Earth. Because of the snap, all farmers and people were also reduced in half, which means the supply of food remained the same. If we use the conventional understanding of living organisms and classify plants as such as well, then he basically erased half of the food resources as well. The scale of work remains the same. Not that Thanos knew he was a stranger to it all. He wasn't cursed with knowledge, as he said. Okay, maybe he was, but no, he didn't even know what he didn't know. He failed to understand that the universe has a way of working itself out. Erasing all life may have been a temporary solution for some life, but it was never going to turn any planet into a paradise or utopia as he thought it would. If the Infinity Gauntlet truly can do anything, and we know because it did a lot more in the comics, and it begs the question, why didn't Thanos go to a more specialized approach? Maybe a vigilante who goes from planet to planet and takes care of the core problems from that planet using the gauntlet. He did not do that because he was always a madman. That's just my thinking here. The very reason he did not believe in anyone but himself was his downfall. This also meant he was unable to understand the nature of living beings. Let's say there are 5 pieces of bread and 10 people. You kill 5 people, so the 5 who are left behind can at least have a good meal, but who can say for sure that everyone would oblige and stick to just 1 piece of bread per person? I mean, some people get hungry, you know what I mean? But anyways, and this doesn't mean Thanos was not a well-written character, because he was gangsterly written in my opinion. Thanos had just as much of a fan base as the movie itself, and for very good freaking reasons. He was wrong, perhaps even evil, but he wasn't a boring character and definitely not a bad one. Despite believing his own idea to be the only way forward, he still engaged in genuine dialogue with others, complimented their virtues, and made sure to drop one-liners so freaking epic.
I am inevitable.
I mean, seriously, how is it that his one-liners are so good? I mean, they almost feel illegal. It was never about whether Thanos was right. It was always about how even though he is a mass murderer who took the lives of trillions of people, he still managed to invoke a sense of sympathy inside the hearts of the audience. In my opinion, he fully deserves his place as the best MCU antagonist yet. But I'm sure Kang the Conqueror, the next MCU big bad, will give him a run for his money, but we'll see how this all plays out. Now, I wouldn't lie, there was definitely some semblance of my own personal bias in this video, but I'd definitely like to hear your guys' comments below. Drop your thoughts in the comment section, comment below, let me know what you guys thought. I'm looking forward to reading them. By the way, this video is sponsored by coffee because I do these videos early in the morning while my kids are asleep. So if you'd like to buy your boy a cup of coffee, link in description, or donate to the super thanks. But the greatest compliment you guys can do is by liking this video and subscribing to this channel. Thank you again for watching. Until next time.